Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In the last video, we dived into .NET Aspire and covered some pretty cool stuff like smart defaults, the developer dashboard, and orchestration. If you missed that, no worries, just hit the link in the corner up here and check that out first. Now let's continue with two more exciting topics, service discovery and components in .NET Aspire. First off, service discovery is all about how your different services can find and communicate with each other, even when they are running in different environments. So no more hard coding connections or endpoints. Aspire simplifies all that for you. And then we've got components, where we break down your app into manageable pieces, making it super easy to scale, maintain, and deploy. And by the way, if you are interested in checking out the project, the link is down below. The repository is private, so if you want access, just drop your GitHub username in the comments and I'll grant you access. Alright, with that, let's dive in today's tutorial and explore service discovery and components in detail. Let's get started. Okay, first I should say before we dive in, make sure to check out the last video because this one is a continuation of it. If you haven't watched it yet, it might be a little confusing. So click the link below in the description here to catch up. Okay, here we are going to talk about service discovery. We put that API service discovery out there and we have the application, the website out there. And if they are running in a container, they might not necessarily be running inside the same and being able to see each other on the same network segment. And they might have different names and things when they get deployed and move around. So how do we manage that? How do we handle that? Well, right now I've got everything loaded into an app settings config and we've got some endpoints like in there as configuration items. Maybe I've got environment variables that I'm setting on that app service, on that VM, wherever it's that the application is running, that says, hey, here's where to go to find that other thing. And it can get dicey. It can get dicey a little if I don't have that configuration variable through a configuration error because I don't know where to get the production endpoint for our weather content. So managing those connection strings, and as our topology grows, having to understand which services needed to get connected to those applications can get quite ominous of a process to manage. And we've recognized this and we see this as something that we want to make easier for you to do. So service discovery is part of the features that you can add into your app host project. So we did the API service. We defined it initially with this syntax, add project API service. We can assign that API service to a variable. We know how to do that in C#, and that's C# 1.0 stuff. We know how to do that. But what we can do now is when we define that web front end service, add a reference to the API service, and what this does is it now makes my API visible to the web project using the exact same service name that I declared up here. API service inside quotes, API service down here. Now I don't need to go and configure that in all the places. That configuration is going to be made available for me and for all of my various parts of my application system, so that it passes around and they know how to communicate with each other. And here's the best part, you already know how to do this. We are just going to streamline and script and put a nice interface over how we do this using the standard capabilities that are already baked in there. We know in ASP.NET projects we can set environment variables. So for our web front end, we are going to set an environment variable here that says for the API service you might be requesting. Here's the actual location that you are gonna go to resolve. So these are the same things that you could already be doing with ASP.NET Core, but it's kind of tricky and it's not exactly discoverable in the documentation. Okay, let's head back over to our project and let's start connecting those services and make it a heck of a lot easier to work with our API. Now I'm going to go over here and call this just the API. Alright, so I have an API. So if I do that same with reference here and I'll add in API notice, just like we showed in the slides with reference, is pointing to the variable that defines my API project. So I've connected inside the Aspire system that's going to a startup and manage our projects. I've connected these two services, these two projects. I'll go back over to my weather hub and I can go into my app settings, and where we had hard coded here your weather endpoint. I don't need to do that anymore. I can go back over here to program. Here's the weather endpoint. Go get it out of builder config configuration. I don't need to do that anymore. I can change that, and I can change the URI here to HTTPS plus HTTP. And that looks kind of weird. I'll talk about that in a minute, but now that looks weird. Let's talk about that for a second. HTTPS plus HTTP says this is a feature of ASP.NET. Try to make the secure connection first, the HTTPS connection. If you can't, fail over and use the HTTP connection for the NWS. And that string is the same as what was defined over here. So my web application is using the same name for this API service that we assigned to it. Okay, let's start the application and see how it works. All right, here we go. There's my console for the app host setting up. Here's the dashboard, and we can see NWS is up there. If I want to go look at that Swagger endpoint, it's right here. I have the other endpoint for the web service, it's right here, and we can see it's still connecting and getting the same data. Taking a look back in my app host resources, I can click into the details over here, and it's going to show me all the things that were configured for the website. And if I scroll down here, here's the endpoints that the web server is answering on. And if I continue scrolling down, I can see all the things that it's set up for publishing some of that logging information, some of that telemetry information. And there is my services right down here. I can click the little eyeball and I can see here's the addresses that it's communicating to the other right into the web application for where the API lives. The API lives at localhost 5271. It's down here, so it's made that connecting for me. This is information that I don't have to manage anymore. I don't care what the host name is. I don't care what the port is. Aspire is connecting them for me. Okay, all of this was about service discovery and how to configure it. And now let's jump over to the next topic, that is components. So we've built with two projects here. I showed you a little bit of a component there, where we brought in the ability to add npm hosted projects, node projects. But what if I want to add in other things? I mentioned databases and other things that are in containers, and I showed you how you can add a container. But there are components that are available out there that are optimized for collaborating and working with Aspire. Things like RabbitMQ, Redis Cache, SQL Server, Postgres, Cosmos DB, that will help you connect in and run those services locally as a developer in a test scenario, so that you can interact with them and not run into any issues standing up and knocking down test services in some sort of test environment or production environment. We will bring in those pre-configured services running in a container so that it doesn't matter if you break it. If you misconfigure it, we can knock that down and start up a new instance. No penalty, no cost to you. It's just a container running on your local instance, and we've connected it with all of the orchestration capabilities and telemetry capabilities, so that you can also see the telemetry coming and going out of those components. Makes it a heck of a lot easier for you then to be able to see exactly what's going on as your queries run on SQL Server, as the cache keys are read and set in Redis. You can see all of that on your dashboard and interact with it as a developer. And when we choose to go deploy to a production space, it will deploy these containers appropriately to that location if you'd like. Or you can configure it to use an appropriately hosted service running on Azure, running on AWS, or use the container on Kubernetes if you'd like. So how do we do this? How do we bring these things in and start working with other components? You saw me do it a little bit there earlier. You can bring in a package, and especially constructed Aspire package, and they are all called Aspire something. And then you are able to, just like we added a project, you can add Postgres, you can add Redis, give it a service name, and then reference it using that same with reference capability in your other system components. It becomes real easy then to start to see how your one project, that is just that web project, start up with a Postgres database right next to it when you are debugging and working locally with all the Aspire tools running, and you are connecting into the Postgres database. Works great. Set up that Redis output cache, see how your application works with the output cache and interact with it. And when you are done and you stop all your services, no problem, everything shuts down, and you are left in the same state you were before you start debugging. Redis and Postgres are just the tip of the iceberg. There are other containers out there for MySQL, SQL Server, RabbitMQ containers out there. There are more containers coming online all the time. The Aspire team is working with and coordinating with a bunch of different folks in the community to active and make more capabilities available to you in this very opinionated, orchestrated, and choreographed way that makes it easy for you to set up and use those tools quickly and easily. These tools that you reference, Postgres, Redis, MySQL, SQL Server, it will automatically download and install those for you using Docker Desktop or Podman. It's your choice. There is configuration option available for both. So we then integrate with our components by using the same libraries and things that we have in our ASP.NET applications, in our worker process applications, to introduce those capabilities. I use output cache. I'm already doing that inside my project, but I wanted to use Redis for it. So while I have the add service defaults, we are going to add Redis output cache, give it the same name as a cache service, and that output cache will then start writing to Redis instead of using local memory. Okay, let's get back into our project and talk about and see exactly how this works. So here I'm back in our source code. I'll go to the app host and I'm going to add an Aspire package. Let's add the Redis output caching, because here's the deal. Think about this for a second with me. The weather forecast doesn't change every minute. It probably changes once every 15 minutes, every half hour. So I could reliably output cache from my API for at least 15 minutes. The current weather forecast that was delivered for Manhattan, Philadelphia, etc. I've added the Redis output cache component. So here inside of app host, I'm inside program.cs. I can now add that Redis cache. I'm going to say add Redis, and let's just call this output cache. Okay, all right, there it is. I have Redis available to me and I want to output cache it right here with my API. So I'll do with reference cache. Now my API knows about a Redis cache service. It's going to be given the connection string information to connect to that Redis service. I'll pivot now and go back over to the API, and I'm going to add a package here. Alright, so I'm going to add a .NET Aspire package, and this time we are going to add Aspire Stack Exchange.Redis output caching. And this is a special version of the output caching NuGet package that knows how to use the Aspire orchestration capabilities and connect over to Redis. So inside my API, down to program over here, so I will just say build add Redis output cache. All right, and we called it output cache. Once again, that names is the same name of the service that we assigned over here. That string needs to match exactly capitalization and all. So you can see it there. And now my API knows about a Redis output cache. Alright, if we take a look at the endpoints down here, my endpoints have some output caching already built in to cache for 15 minutes when we go and get a forecast. So let's start this again now that we've added that cache, the Redis cache component, and we'll see how this starts up and how Redis now enters the dashboard and becomes part of our application system. So here's my console starting. All right, there we go. So now you see my name surface output cache is right up top. It's not a project, it's a container that's running, and it tells me the name of the container that was used to load up and start that. You can provide an override if you'd like a different version. There are configuration options available for that. I can look at the logs for that container and see exactly how it started up and got running. So let's connect over and start getting some data and see how this works. I'm going to go through and I'm going to go to Pennsylvania. So we'll look at the pens here, and I can go through and click into some of these. And the data for these now you see is coming back much faster because it's being output cached. I'll go back over here and let's look at the trace. And now things get a little bit more interesting. Now I can click in here and see that it went to go get the list of zones, my observation locations, and it went to get it out of Redis and return that content. I'll back up the next one here. So they represented the website. We went to get the forecast from the API for a specific endpoint, and I can see exactly what it requested. PAZ5, and it checked in the output cache. It went to api.weather.gov, and I can click in and see exactly that request that it made. It got that data, and then we can see here it set that data in the Redis output cache. Further, if we scroll down a little bit, here we go to one of these, and the API is trying to get a specific forecast, and it found it in Redis cache and returned it. Alright, now it's becoming more interesting. Now I've got a full view of my website being interacted with. It's interacting with my API. It's getting it from the third party service, presenting and interacting with it in the cache. Alright, really interesting and compelling stuff that we are starting to see, making this much easier to work with, the resiliency, the output caching, and being able to view all of that information. So much more that we now have full control over, and we can see how it works inside of our application system. Alright guys, so there you have it. In the last video we covered Smart Defaults, the developer dashboard, and orchestration, which gave you the tools to streamline your app development and monitoring process. And in this video we dive deep into the service discovery and components, showing you how easy it is to bring everything together using Aspire, and how powerful components like Redis, Postgres, and SQL Server can be seamlessly integrated. With these tools you can quickly set up, test, and optimize your services without worrying about misconfiguration or breaking anything. It's all orchestrated, and you have full visibility with the built-in dashboard. Whether you are running things locally or pushing to production, this setup gives you flexibility, control, and most importantly, speed. If you haven't already, go back and watch the previous video to really understand the full picture of how Aspire simplifies and enhances your development process. And don't forget, if you want access to the project repository, drop your GitHub username in the comments and I'll get you sorted. As always, make sure to hit that like button if you found this helpful, subscribe to stay updated on more tutorials, and let's keep building awesome stuff together. See you in the next one. Cheers.